Hello everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So casting decisions, they're pretty important. And the worst casting decision in the history of mankind is of course Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. But the second worst is probably casting a Australian photo model with no acting experience in a James Bond film to replace Sean Connery. They were actually able to fuck this thing up just in the first minutes of this movie. I think the first line of dialogue that James Bond has in this is he shows up and says, "That didn't happen to the other fellow." And it was like they made a fourth wall joke in a James Bond film. And it comes from this gangly goof. We are in deep trouble. This is the worst James Bond film that has ever been made, in my opinion. Some people have been trying to defend this movie and have, pointed out certain things that they think make this movie not only a okay James Bond film, but a good James Bond film. I must unfortunately inform you that you're completely wrong. And I have been thinking, how would you fix this movie? Now, based upon what happens in this movie, I'm having a hard time doing that. The only thing that maybe could have worked is that if you would have made this into the actually first James Bond film, because it would have made more sense that what happens next in the James Bond storyline happened. But this is like having an episode 1 after episode 5 chronologically, because there are various points in this movie where Blofeld and James Bond having these conversations, and it feels like they have never actually met before. That is because it has been plucked out of the book on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and because that thing took place before the events that happened in movies that had already been filmed, makes this movie feel a little bit chronologically screwed up. But that is not the biggest problem this movie has. It is a lot more. This is not a terrible movie. This is not going to be a savage beatdown of this movie. It has good parts to it too, but let's find out what those are, shall we? This is on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Oh dear. James Bond comes in contact with a Corsican criminal of some description who has a daughter, Tracy. And she is a woman with lots of problems, and her father feels that she's going to self-destruct at some point and says that if you take care of her, if you fall in love with her, if you marry her and stuff like that, she won't be alone anymore, and you can save her from her downfall. In exchange for that, I will give you information about Spectre. James Bond agrees and actually falls in love with her. The concept of James Bond falling in love and getting married, all that stuff, was a little bit, what? It was such a red flag of this movie that I was already, oh no, this is bad. So, and then nothing happens. They actually have a full-on rom-com fall in love montage to the tones of Louis Armstrong, We Have All the Time in the World. A great song. Doesn't fit this movie, doesn't fit James Bond, I'm sorry. And then you're expecting that stuff is going to happen. We have some bad espionage thing and some really horrible movie fights. Actually, the movie fights in this movie are so bad that they actually make the movie fight that Sean Connery had in the early 60s actually look kind of legitimate. And then we have this weird thing where James Bond goes to this clinic up in the Swiss Alps with a bunch of foxy chicks, and then you're thinking, oh, now things are going to happen. Nope! We're just going to do more boring things and talk to people and sneak around, and nothing is going to happen. And the entirety of the story, I was kind of, what is this? What is Blofeld's point with this thing? I never understood the plan with the women up in the clinic thing. And it was also kind of the back burner to absolutely nothing. So let's talk for a second about George Lazenby and his failed stint as James Bond. Because he just looks like somebody's confused academic. He has no personality, no acting ability, no charisma. And as I said, his fighting ability looks completely phony. And I kind of feel bad for George. He was basically set up to fail in this role. What also was set up to fail in this movie was the editing. This movie has some horrendously bad editing. We have jump cuts, we have story cuts, we have weird things that happens in the editing room, which makes me feel this is one of the worst edited movies I have ever seen, made on this level. I mean, I can have some sketchy editing in my videos, but I am just a guy with a camera and a okay editing program and a deep love for movies and James Bond, but not this James Bond. So the story is boring, it's an absolute snail's pace and a sluggish thing to get through. The anti-chemistry between George Lazenby and everybody he encounters, and especially Tracy, is terrible, and Telly Savalas tries to be Blofeld but cannot match Donald Pleasence at all. He's not bad, he's a totally okay Bond villain. There are bits and pieces of this movie that actually works. The ski chase is gorgeously shot. And why it works so well? Because we don't have to look at George Lazenby, we only have to look at George Lazenby's stunt double. Much better. The stock car race, also kind of fun. But most of the movie is just vague and weird and boring and dull. And then we come to the ending of this thing, which is one of the worst endings I have ever seen. Counting my least favorite endings to a movie of all time, this is easily a top 10. If you've never seen it, oh boy, you're in for a treat. Maybe this ending could have worked if this would have been the first James Bond film, as I said. As it stands now it is the 6th James Bond film and it ends in this way, and I am just so disheartened that they did this. They could have done a million other things that would have been better, but they decided to do the worst thing ever. This is not how you're supposed to leave a James Bond film. It is actually worse than No Time to Die. That is fucking saying something. Should you see this movie? No, I think you can absolutely skip this one. It's boring, it doesn't have the charm of the Sean Connery movies, it doesn't have the swagger of the Moore movies. It is a George Lazenby James Bond film. It is very boring, it's absolutely too long. 2 hours and 22 minutes. Are you insane? The script's logic, it's a sketchy mess at best, and it's a jumbled herky-jerky hodgepodge of absolutely nothing. I don't remember a single sequence actually from this movie. There are some supporting characters that are totally okay, but they have botched James Bond so severely in this movie that it is difficult to feel anything else than, well, this movie is a complete waste of time. This movie is completely skippable. If you have never seen it, don't see it. If you have seen it and planning maybe to rewatch it, don't do it. You will do yourself a service by never seeing this movie ever again. The more I think about this movie, the less I think it really should have 36 points, but I'm actually gonna give it 36 points because there are bits and pieces of it that looks big, that looks grand and gorgeous. As I said, the stock car race, that's fun, and the ski chase is pretty damn amazing. But otherwise this movie is a sluggish thing to get through. It's too long, there are too many weird things that doesn't make any sense, and the ending is absolutely dog ass. So I'll see you next time for so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching, thank you very much.